compass is off, the human being can cause much damage, because the human being has so many gifts, like a creative genius. Imagine a doctor without a moral compass. Imagine a lawyer or a carpenter or a mechanic without their moral compass. Imagine a priest or a religious figure without their moral compass, or a husband or a wife or a mother or a father without their moral compass. And so we are taught that the nature of drugs, that once we come under the influence of drugs, it befogs the mind. We lose control over our senses, and we lose our moral compass. Because in many situations, that when we're under the influence of whatever type of drug, it can make wrong look right and right look wrong. We can actually be doing something that we think is okay, that is correct, that is morally upright, when it is actually the opposite. And so Allah teaches us to keep control of our moral senses, that once we allow ourselves to engage in the drugs, then it could cause us to lose sight of what is real, of what is truthful, and what is false. And so we're taught, stay away. Because the more we become unmindful of our Lord, the more we become unmindful of who we should serve, truly serve, the more we become unmindful of the one God, then the more negative effects it would have on us and others. Some might say, well, that's just alcohol. And alcohol certainly is a major problem, particularly in the black community and in other communities of other oppressed minorities. You'll find a liquor store on virtually every corner. Matter of fact, it's easy to open up a liquor store in the hood. Very easy. They smooth it for you. You know what I'm saying? Like it's simple. You literally can stand on a corner in the hood and stand on one corner and count 3, 4, 5 liquor stores within a city block. And alcohol has done more devastation in our community than almost any other drug. And it's so dangerous. You could just walk in the store and buy it. You could just buy alcohol, because the system, those who run this system, tells you that you're allowed to take drugs, right? You're allowed to take drugs. It's okay for you to take drugs as long as you take this particular type of drug. And so we have a tendency to think that the drug that the system allows is not really a drug. And so you have parents telling their children, stay away from that marijuana and that cocaine, and they're drinking a beer. Because in their minds, alcohol is not a drug. And so what must be understood, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, is that anything that befogs the mind, stay away from. Because you can lose a sense of yourself, and a sense of who you are, and a sense of right and wrong, and you lose the remembrance of Allah. And so in the spiritual sense, in the moral sense, it becomes extremely important for us not to engage. Now, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, there's another angle that comes with this. The United States, as well as the world, is getting ready to go through another 60s type period. There's another 60s type period upon us. And it's not just us saying it. You can read the Financial Times. You can read some of the leaders of some of these financial organizations, like the IMF, the World Bank. You can read the columns and the articles of many of these social engineers who are not just in America, but who are also in Europe. And when they talk, when they have a conversation with each other, they talk about a coming social political upheaval, a time of social unrest, because they know that as a result of the gap between the rich and the poor that is ever widening, and the pressures that are on the people, they know that Europe, not just Europe, the entire world, but particularly the West and particularly the United States, because of course they are the empire and they are the leader, that a period of social unrest is coming to America and other places. You should see this. The people are under too much pressure, and the rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. And they talk about the so-called recovery of the economy. That's a lie. You cannot look at Wall Street to get an idea of whether the economy is recovering. That's a lie. But they'll tell you that Wall Street is, they're gaining points. Wall Street is up and so on and so forth. That's a lie. The only way, the main way that you can tell when an economy is getting healthy again is when there are more jobs that are created, and these jobs offer a living wage. Use that as your barometer, and you will see that these economists are lying because they're being paid to lie. And so there is another period of social unrest coming to America. And it's important for you, your generation, to know your history, to understand how drugs is used. When Britain tried to take over China, what happened? There was a Boxer Rebellion. There were the Chinese there who did not want Britain to come into their land and imperialize their land. And so what did the British do? They gave incentives for farmers in India to grow opium. And when the farmers in India grew opium, the British took the opium to China to do what? To get the people hooked on opium. Because the British knew as long as the people are hooked on drugs, as long as they are under the influence, they cannot fight against British imperialism. What did they do to the Native Americans in this country? They gave them drugs to destroy them. At that time, it was alcohol, firewater, and they used alcohol to destroy them. What did Allah say about it? That it causes hatred. That one of the things that intoxicants do is that it causes hatred between you. And when they put that alcohol on the Native Americans, it was designed to destroy them and to get other Native Americans to fight against each other. How did they get African tribes to fight in Africa? In order to fill up the slave ships, they gave them alcohol, straight up alcohol, drugs, in order to sow this disunity and hatred between them. Get them hooked on drugs. What happened in the 60s? You see, in the 60s, because the system, again, said that you're allowed to take drugs as long as you drink it, some of the people felt that one of the ways that you rebel against the system is by not doing what they said. So the system says you're allowed to take drugs as long as you drink your drugs, as long as it's alcohol. And so some of the activists, thinking that they were rebelling against the system, said, nah, ain't no alcohol. We're going to use LSD. We're going to use weed. We're going to take a drug that the system does not condone. And that became an act of revolution. But when you look and see what happened in the 60s, what destroyed the black community, what destroyed the other communities, was an influx of drugs. Drugs, guns, and gangs. And when these drugs came in, and we knew where these drugs were coming from, we knew it wasn't the 15 and 16-year-old on the corner who was selling these drugs. We knew that that 15 and 16-year-old was not a drug kingpin. We understood that. And of course, people would accuse us of having being susceptible to conspiracy theories. We understood clearly where those drugs was coming from. Even some of the one-time drug dealers admitted that they couldn't help bring drugs into this country without the help of the CIA. And if you read the book Dark Alliance by the man, his last name was Webb, and he actually was specific as to how crack cocaine was being brought into this country with the help of the CIA, and he was so specific that the CIA got with the San Jose Mercury News and told them to recant that story. They put so much pressure on my man that he ended up committing suicide, they said. But he was specific as to how these drugs were coming into the community, because in the 1980s, you saw the rise of crack cocaine in our communities. One of the reasons why you saw the